What's up, everybody? Welcome to Mongols. This is our reaction show where we're going to break down basically what we saw when the Switchbacks came to town to take on the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. I am Mike. Joining me for this one is Steve and Josh. Josh is taking a sip of his non-victory beverage, but it is a beverage nonetheless. Josh, how's it going?
So close to being victory beverage. What is it, like 30 seconds away from being a victory beverage? Heartbreak. Yeah, it's going good. I had a case of the vid. That happened like on Sunday, and so all week I was pretty much just isolating. So after this weekend, I'll be able to do normal things. I feel fine. Like I got sick for like a couple of days and I was fine, but like the recommendations are all like 5 days after you should probably like social distance, and I was like, I'm outside of the Hounds game. Maybe I should go, but I was like, I don't want to like risk anyone. And I felt fine, but I just watched it at home, which in retrospect, probably a good decision.
Yeah. Steve, you were at the game, but like halfway through, you sent me a picture of the parking lot, and I was like, "Wait, Were you leaving?" And no, you weren't leaving.
No, just like it was like walking back. I ran out to my car to get some ibuprofen because I was starting to get a little bit of a headache. I was just like, "Hey, that's a cool shot with the stadium, the moon up behind it." It's like that's fun. I did appreciate your your joke though. Like, oh, I wouldn't blame you if you did. And then it got a little better, and then it got a little worse. But no, I mean, it was a good night at the stadium. I really thought the weather was going to drive a lot of people away. We did get an out of nowhere. I mean, it was like, okay, the rain's coming, but it's not here. Wait to go hide in the car until the rain comes. And it just, I mean, instantaneous downpour. Like there was no warning. It went from like drop, 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 whoosh. I mean, soaked by the time I got in the car 20 feet away. And so I thought that with the whole weather report was going to keep people out. But I mean, Paul Child stand was pretty full. And it's at the grandstand was probably like 70% full. So not the best attendance, but way better than I kind of expected. And it got decent for the rest of the game. We didn't get any rain during the game, half-hour delay because of the weather. And then it did get really humid and really started to cool off towards the end of the game. So, yeah, they had the pyro show, which was fine. I was kind of surprised they put up like barriers halfway through the field, like lengthwise. And the players are out there signing autographs on the one side, and then the pyro show starts on the trail behind the scoreboard while they're signing autographs, which was, I really didn't expect that. I thought with the weather delay and with the pyro show, they weren't going to do autographs, but they did, which was cool to see. There's still enough people around, so it seemed like it was pretty busy out there. So,
yeah. They also debuted the new puzzle, which Josh, you got your hands on. Was that a giveaway or did you buy that?
Yeah. No, it was a giveaway. So it was like I think the first 1,000 people. But yeah, so it's the mural that was made on the cantina wall, right outside the what's it called? It's sponsored now. They call it a cantina. I can't remember. Modella or I can't remember. Heineken? I don't know, something like that. Cantina. But yeah, so that mural is really cool. Not a huge fan of the fact that it says Hound Town on it. But overall, not bad. It's a 500-piece puzzle. Liz was super excited to get it. And I will say, like, graphics on the box itself are really cool. Just big moments and just it looks good. So
I haven't opened mine up. It's still in the car from last night. I'm hoping that the Houndtown part is not part of the actual puzzle. It's just the border that they have on the front, and that the puzzle is just the mural.
It looks like it's just a mural. So I think
that's what I'm hoping. Yeah,
you are going to be fine. But yeah,
cut the bottom off otherwise.
It's one of their better giveaways. I feel like it's actually like something that looks nice, packaging's great, and all in all, no complaints. So
yeah,
killing it.
I think it's one of those things too that sort of bridges the gap between Hounds fans and non-Hounds fans. Like you could sit down with family members and they would be like, "Oh, that's a cool puzzle," regardless of whether or not they like the Hounds. Whereas like the bobbleheads are cool, but like you're really not going to want one of those unless you're a Hounds fan. So that's a cool idea. I am intrigued. We've had conversations amongst ourselves about the whole Hantan branding. I wonder if anybody else like actually likes that or it's actually used. We should look on social media and see if anybody's actually using that hashtag beyond the team. But
Go ahead.
No.
I was gonna say, okay, here's my nitpick with Houndstown. Houndtown only, like, the reason why you have Hound and Town is because it rhymes. Like, you see Houndtown, it like sounds right. But when you change it to Town, like it no longer even closely rhymes to Hound. So it's Hound Ta, and that doesn't work. So that's my nitpick, is the alliteration of it doesn't work when you do the Yinzer town.
Yeah. When I think about it, like working with a lot of graduate students, interact with a lot of people that come to Pittsburgh from somewhere else, but then also a lot of people that are from Pittsburgh originally or the Pittsburgh area. And for me, it's just like, it's one of those things that is, I don't think, part of the culture in everyday life of Pittsburgh anymore. So it harkens back to a different era. And like the students that I interact with that are from here, they don't like that type of stuff, right? Like they'll maybe every once in a while use yins kind of with some irony. And then like the students that aren't from here, sometimes like they'll play into it for a little bit and then they give up on it like 3 months into the year. And so I just think it's like, I don't know. I don't know that it hits for anybody really well, but it does kind of harken to a history of Pittsburgh, which, okay, but I like Josh's take a lot. I hadn't thought of it that way, but that identifies kind of one of the frustrations that I have with it that I hadn't been able to articulate.
Yeah, it's Yin's going downtown. You know what I mean? Like if you're doing downtown, and when you do Hound Town, it doesn't work. So
yeah,
that's my Ohioan complaint. So maybe take it with a grain of salt. But yeah, if it had Yins in it or something like that, I can get behind that a little bit more. But just the town doesn't work for me.
I mean, Mike, you're the Pittsburgher of the three of us. Like your thoughts?
I think what you need to do is, from sort of a marketing perspective, look at what is the average age demographic of fans that are going to Hounds games versus something like a Steeler game or Penguins game. And I think that, the Steelers and the Penguins have a much deeper history. And so you have a bit more of an older demographic that you're targeting. And so therefore you can harken back to those sorts of things. But I mean, it even feels almost like a generation removed. Like I know people like my parents' age that will talk like that, but even more so, it was like their parents that talked like that. And so, yeah, you have some of these older teams that have that tradition, but I think the Hounds are targeting a much younger demographic that just, it's much more international in terms of how we speak and just sort of what we watch and what we do. And there's less of that lingo. So I get it. But I think especially if you're trying to use it as sort of a marketing tag, I just don't, I don't like it. But that's me,
Are we just talking about this because we don't want to talk about other
yes.
Listen, we're just trying to say we're over analyzing a stupid hashtag. No, we would never overthink this at all.
So one other thing to point out before we get into this game, I don't know if you guys caught any of it, but the USL Super League did kick off this past weekend, which Hounds no affiliation with it at this moment, but it is kind of a landmark move for the USL in terms of now there is a second first division women's league with a bunch of USL teams that are in there. So like Lexington, who's going to be joining the USL Championship next year, they now have a women's team in the Super League. And when I talked to Jeff Garner about the USLW team, he sort of made no secret that our aspirations are not to just end at the W League, that, we do want to go Super League at some point. He didn't say that explicitly, but it was kind of a like wink, wink, nod, nod. Yeah. So just something to keep an eye on, that this is the USL sort of first stab at going sort of fall to spring. The women kicked off this past weekend. I want to say that the one game had over 15,000 people, which is great for obviously opening game. So just something else to keep an eye on as a soccer fan in this developing landscape of just everything that's going on and changing, especially over the next few years. So, yeah. If you're interested, check it out.
Yeah, it's cool.
Okay, I guess let's talk about this game. So, Hounds draw 2-2 against the Switchbacks. Let's just go pure emotion. Steve, how are you feeling about the result?
A bit apathetic, a bit disconnected. Like waking up this morning, I was just like, well, okay. Like, I'm just resigned to the fact that I don't think we're making the playoffs. I don't see it at this stage, right? We had our chances last night. We didn't do what we needed to do. Yeah. I've got more to say, but I'll wait.
Josh, pure emotion. How you feeling?
So it's funny. So we have our Slack channel, the Mongols crew, and in there I had just typed because it was near the end of the game, and it's before our goal. So I had just typed out like, I honestly, guys, I don't think we're making the playoffs. And then as soon as I hit enter, we scored. And I was about ready to write up a response to that, being like, well, the Hounds have to prove me wrong. And then as soon as I was about ready to push enter on that one, Switchback scored. So I was like, no, never mind. I stand by my original statement.
But reading your arc there, Josh, was the roller coaster that I think we were all experiencing in the stadium.
It's like, all right, the Hounds proved me wrong. They got it. Let's do this. And then it was like, oh, never mind. Back to what I originally said. Yeah, it's do or die. And like at this point, like if we don't get on a roll and start, winning these home games that we need to win, we're not going to make it. We're already 2 games in hand on most, or we have most teams have 2 games in hand on us. And so it's like, if we're outside, looking in now, it's only going to get worse unless we get better.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of my feeling too, is that even if we would have won last night at the last minute, I don't have any sort of level of confidence that this team is going to show up and perform consistently. And I don't know how much of that is actually the players and how much of that is the system. We will talk about that. But especially when it was late and it was tied, this was a game that felt like if you were going to try to draw up the perfect scenario for us to get 3 points and sort of put it in the bank so that we could have it to use towards the playoffs, this would be it. Right? You have Colorado, who has really struggled on the road this year. I think they only had 2 wins. Like the majority were losses all season on the road. At most, they've scored like 2 goals. Most games, they've been only scoring 1. They're coming west to east. So they're actually playing a little bit earlier than they're used to. There was a rain delay. We're at home. Like, everything was in our favor, that all we had to do was get the 3 points. And then we're really basically just looking at Eastern Conference teams the rest of the way out, except for the very last game of the season. So it's okay, great. Pick up those 3 points. And at no point during this game, they scored 13th minute, Switchback scored in the 13th minute, and then immediately bunkered. And it was like, well, here we go. Like, I feel like that's just what we're going to see moving forward, these teams bunkering. And I have no confidence that we can break down a team when they're bunkering. So as much as I want to hold out hope that we're going to make the playoffs, and we, statistically, we still can, there's this piece of me that just feels like it's just not going to happen this year. And that sucks. I hope I'm wrong, but yeah. I mean,
you're touching on a lot of the things I think that are important to that, though, right? Like, it's the confidence in the team to get the lead and then hold the lead against a team that can score some goals, right? I mean, you look at Colorado, they've given up more goals than games played, but they've also scored even more goals than that, right? So you knew that there was a potential in any Colorado game that a 1-2, 2-2, something like that type of game is going to be highly probable with the way they play. They leave themselves a little bit exposed, but they're also able to score some goals. And we saw that, right? Like, we found a way to score the first. That opens things up a little bit. I didn't think we were going to get the second. We ended up getting the second, but then they find a way to to close it out for the draw. And last night I wanted to put a lot of onus on our defense, but as I kind of like think back through the game and watching some of the things back, like, yeah, that second goal, we should have had better coverage. But both goals came from like dumb turnovers that we gave, right? And both involving a forward. Right. Like, I mean, yeah, Suber goes to clear the ball, doesn't, I think, see Keziah Sterling there, and it ricochets off Sterling for the throw in, and that's how they get the setup for the goal. The other one, Kizza giving the ball away, and Colorado attacking with numbers, overwhelming our defense. But I just like, what do you do in those hard situations? And we didn't close it out. And there are more issues than that, right?
Yeah. Let's talk a minute. If we could go back to the prediction show and sort of take what Liz and Mondo and I had to say. In all fairness, when Mondo gave his prediction, I was like, there's no way. He gave 2 predictions. He was like, I'd love to see us play with a back 4 so that we could get Walty, Sample, Griffin, and Mertz all on the field at the same time. And I was like, Bob's not going to play a back 4, but okay. Like that's some wishful thinking. And then he was like, I think Walty's going to score. And I was like, that's also not going to happen, but okay. Like, good for you. Good shout. Well, sure enough, he was right on both accords. So the only downside was that, yes, we did get Walty, Sample, Griffin, and Mertz all on the field at the same time. I think when we saw that, it was like, whoa, okay, we're actually going to try back 4. We're actually going to try to attack this game in a different way. No, instead we played Griffin as a center back, like harkening all the way back to the beginning of the season. That in and of itself left a lot of questions for me, because I think we've all sort of said, and who knows, maybe Bob's seeing something differently, obviously, but when you play Griffin further forward, he is very effective in the attack. And for a lot of times this season, we've been playing him as a holding midfielder, which is fine. He can sort of play all over the place, but especially last season when he came in after being away, we played him almost as like a number 10, and he scored at least a goal or 2. He had 1 in the Open Cup against an MLS team, like super effective. So it was like, okay, let's push him forward. And instead we're moving him further back. And I think what he was trying to do was to add another body in the defense. So you're still playing with 3 at the back, but then having sort of Griffin and Walty have the ability to push forward and like swap for each other, like dribble into space. But I'm sort of rambling here, but when you have a defense that, we talked to Pat Hogan last week, you have a defense that's leading, or it's close to leading the leagues in terms of goals against and shutouts. Why are we tinkering with the defense when we need the win? Like the defense is what you can count on. Like they're going to be there to like keep you in the game, and you should be trying to change things moving forward, not the other way around. So Steve, thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've said this for a while. I mean, a couple of years or so, that I think Danny Griffin is one of the best attacking midfielders we've seen under the Bob Lilly era. And yet he rarely is playing that far forward, right? So our best attacking midfielder, who's usually playing as a holding or defensive mid, is playing as a center back last night, right? Like you're giving up so much. I think there was a couple of things, and it was like, okay, well, I guess maybe I saw the lineup and I was like, maybe there's a couple injuries. And I looked down, I'm like, oh, nope, there's our other 2 center backs sitting on the bench, who then ended up coming in, right? At the end of the game, we had all 4 of our guys that have played significant time at center back this season on the field at the same time. And then I think the other aspect for me is just like, I kind of feel like Bob saw these are the 10 outfield players that performed the best for him in practice. And rather than saying what gives us the best team, it's like, how do I get the best performers on the field without looking at, and this is making a big assumption, right? Like, and it's pretty liberal of a perspective, I think. But like that's what I kind of feel like. Like he's like, these are the guys that I think are playing the best right now, so I'm going to get them out on the field, regardless of that, what that means for the team dynamic and the tactical formation. So let's put Danny at center back, even if that's not the best option at center back. He's just playing better in general than so-and-so, right? And I don't like that. I don't think it's useful to, like you said, Mike, tinker with the defense when that's the stable part of it. Do something else, right? Like change your formation a little bit then, right? Like if what you're seeing isn't enough, then don't mess with what's already strong, mess with something else.
Do you think Griffin, even like we all agree that center back's not his best position, but do you think a Griffin's center back abilities are better than anyone else's center back abilities on this team?
No.
So there's like, that's what I was like,
yeah.
I don't think so either. I don't, so I'm trying to like get into why. And the only thing that I can come up with is exactly what you're saying, which is that it's because he thought the best players were on the field, and that's what he wants. And he did end up, if I remember right, like Griffin did end up getting pushed forward later on in the game.
After Hogan came in, right? Or was it? No, it was when Biasi came in.
Yeah, I would say because Hogan didn't come in until the 90th minute. Yeah. So yeah, Biasi, 78th minute, not exactly much better. But like, so eventually we did see it, but yeah, it took way too long. And and that's what I've been kind of coming back to is like, if we used all of our subs and it was a situation where is the issue, he just doesn't have the tools that he needs to make this work. And he's trying his best to do what he can with what he has, which still falls back onto him in the long run because he's the one that,
put these tools together.
Yeah, exactly. He put the team together. So it's like, I'm not, placing the blame somewhere else, but I'm just wondering if this is just the best we got and this is what it's going to be. And which is why it's so disheartening because I do feel like the guys on the field had a good game as far as like their abilities and were, I don't think this looked like a bad team. It just doesn't look good enough.
Yeah, I mean, as you're talking about that, right? Like you bring up using all the subs, and I mean, we've talked about this the past few weeks. I think like the sub decisions don't make a lot of sense to me, and I think they don't make a lot of sense to most of us. I mean, at halftime, he makes 2 subs, but they're exact like for like replacements. Makes another sub in the 61st minute, another exact like for like substitution. And it only starts changing when he puts Biasi on for Blackstock, right? But at that point, then what he decides to do is to pull Kenny back to that wing back position to push Griffin further forward, which is, I think, a negative in both ways in terms of Kenny, right? Like you're taking Kenny's ability to distribute the ball in a more advanced position, to be in the center of the field, out of the equation, and you're putting him in a position that he's not going to be very defensively strong in, especially as he's slowed down, as he's aged, right? And so I really didn't like that sub. And then another sub where you pull out a midfielder or a defensive midfielder to put on a 4th center back. And I just kind of feel like at that point, it's one of those things that, yeah, these are the tools that I have, even if they're not working. When you're making those like for like subs and you decide you need to make other subs, well, you don't have much choice. You've just got to put who's still on the bench on and find somebody to take off. And that's kind of how I felt about that. And I don't think it worked, right? Like Justin talked about it last week. If we're going to make the playoffs, you got to go for it. And none of these subs to me said, we're going for this game.
Yeah. I mean, this was sort of a golden opportunity. I'm sort of jumping the gun here, but I'll put the standings up for those of you who are watching this. So the way things play out right now is after this draw, and one thing I want to talk about too is we still haven't lost in 7 games. So I think all 3 of us are like, ugh, this sucks. But we haven't lost in 7 games. So you can always point to that as a positive. Now, the problem is that we've drawn 4 of our last 5. So that's not great. But when you look at this week and you look at the East, Charleston lost, Tampa lost, Indy lost, Birmingham lost, Rhode Island drew, North Carolina lost. All of these are teams that, for better or worse, we're going to be battling for a playoff spot against. They all drop points. And so this was a case that had we gotten 2 more extra points, we would have leapfrogged North Carolina and sort of been the next in line to get to the playoffs, which would have been great. But then B, who knows how else these other things would have shaken out. So, yeah, just another sort of total missed opportunity, I think.
Kind of want to talk about the drawing thing because I was looking at that today and just contemplating because we have 10 draws. Like we've tied 10 times. That's a lot. And 5 of them home, 5 of them away, I think, if I'm right. And I think 5 of those draws are 0-0 draws. Because I was trying to think of like, what can we learn from the fact that we have 10 draws? Does that mean our defense is the problem, actually? But when it comes down to it, half those draws are 0-0. So it's not like the defense did anything wrong there. So it all keeps on coming back to the tools we have, and scoring's the thing that we're lacking. I know that if we had a better defense, maybe 5 of these draws could have been wins, which is fair. But I feel like it comes down to the fact that we're not scoring a lot, period. So that is where it comes to. And like when we are scoring, is it coming from our forwards or is it coming from like this game, defensive players and just looking, for good set pieces? And we're not exactly the best at set pieces either, but still that's where it's coming from right now. So
yeah. We have Josh, to your point, we have 21 goals this season in 25 games. Give me a guess of how many of those came from forwards.
Ooh, I didn't look into this. I don't know. It has to be half, right?
Not quite. Steve, do you have a guess?
I'm going to say you said 21.
21 goals total this season. How many came from our forwards?
I'm going to say 9.
I feel like you read the agenda. It's 9. So.
No, I didn't. No, I was trying to go through, like calculate. I was trying to figure out how many does Keziah have.
Yeah.
And then I was like, yeah.
It's 9. So 42% of our goals have come from the forwards this year. So when you say 42%, you're like, oh, that's not bad. But like when you think 9 out of 21, you're like, that's not a lot. When those are the guys that are supposed to be putting it in the net. And listen, I get, but anytime I talk to, go ahead, Steve.
Like what you're saying there, and I want to like be explicit about it, is that percentage would be fine if we were scoring more than 21 goals, right? Like,
right.
We've played 25 games. We're not scoring a goal a game, right? If we were scoring 1.5 goals a game, okay, who cares? But how are you going to win games when you can't even score on average once a game?
Yeah. This sort of gets back to Josh's point. I think a phrase that I had used a few games back was, I feel like this team is like perfectly mediocre. And I think that number of draws sort of highlights the fact that, like, yeah, we're kind of mediocre. And what's depressing is, Steve, to your point, when you look at us defensively, our defense is in like the top 5 in the league in terms of goals against average and shutouts. So that means that our offense is just really, really bad for the rest of us to come out like in the middle. And that's just kind of where that's been the story of the season. I don't think we're telling anybody anything new.
We draw more than we lose, but we lose more than we win is where it comes down to. So it's not good. It's not good.
Yeah. I mean, and so you talked about a few minutes ago, that we haven't lost in 7 games. And Justin and I have both talked about this recently in slightly different ways, but what do the Hounds need to do to get into the playoffs? And a couple weeks ago, we had 12 games left, and I said, I think we need 23, 24 points, right? Like basically, in essence, we need 2 points per game through the rest of the season. In those past 7 games, we're just over 1 point a game. And that's the problematic part of that, right? Like how do you climb the standings when even if you're not losing, you're not making progress in most of your games?
Yeah. The draws aren't going to be what propels us above the line.
No.
It's because even, you figure if everybody plays 2 games and other teams are winning 1 and losing 1, they still got 3 points. We got 2 points if we draw both of those. So we've got to win. Which, we can nitpick all day because, that's kind of what we do in terms of decisions that were made and things like that. Was there anything that was positive from this game that you guys saw that you thought was worth calling out?
Walty, I thought that was a pretty good goal. I mean, okay, the first goal was good. I liked it, but it also took us 3 shots to get that goal, and we were lucky to get those 3 shots because it was like first one was in the cross in, and then it bounced off, and then Walty took 2 shots, right? Yeah. Tried it once, and then didn't go, and then tried it again, and it went in. So, like, yeah, great. I love the hustle. I love the commitment to that. It's just that's kind of indicative, though, of where we're at. So, like, we need 3 bites of that apple before we actually get it. So it's concerning.
Yeah, Steve, any positives for you?
I'll force a positive just because I made such a big deal about it last week that we had more shots on goal. Like we were actually putting the ball in a place where it could go into the back of the net. I think we had 4 on target shots. So that's an improvement over the previous 2 games. That's about what I can come up with. That I'm like, okay, hey, look, here's something positive for me.
Yeah. I mean, it's we got goals. I mean, I feel like I've been very scared that we are falling back into the scoreless drought that we had for so long. And I was like, oh no, are we back? Like, do we have like a blip? And now it's like, oh, can't score goals again. So it's just the fact that we actually scored goals, I feel like is a pretty good positive.
Sure.
I don't like, the fact that it didn't come from run of play and come from our forwards, but it was goals, which is better than done.
Yeah, I think the message that internally, we've all been saying we'd like to see more goals from our forwards, and I think that's legit. That is the function of the forwards, but I think that the message internally, and I'm theorizing this based on conversations with the players, is that they feel this season that everything they do is a team effort. So if Walty scores, if Suber scores, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter whether it's a forward or not or anything like that. That everything they do, they attack as a team, they defend as a team. Like even when I was like singing Pat Hogan's praises, he was like, yeah, but like it starts with the forwards. And like I think part of that's him being Hubble. But at the same time, I think there is that mentality. So that's good. But also like we're still not scoring enough. So yes, it's a team thing, but we need to be doing more.
But I think that's I think that we're hearing that from the players because that's what Bob is preaching to the players, because he recognizes he doesn't have a guy that can just take control of the game with the ball at his feet, drive at defenders, and score a goal. And so it has to be that with the tools that he has, because you don't have an Albert Dikla this year.
Yeah, agreed. Well, anything else you guys want to say about this game?
I mean, I could nitpick some more a little bit, like the last goal against us. Do you think that was a savable? Not save, but the defense was lacking. Obviously, that he got a header on that. I think it was Asamanu that was supposed to be marking him, and instead he went up for the header to try to head it away, but whiffed, and that's what caused the goal because they got the header and did not whiff.
I think that was my biggest frustration with that goal, was the fact that we now had, to Steve's point, we had 4 center backs on the field. So basically you've got guys back there whose job it is to keep the ball out of the net. And then you have this player pop up, I think it was between Asamanu and Biasi. Biasi was behind him.
That's the one he took.
But the guy was in front of Biasi, and it was basically a free header. And it's like, how do you give up a free header in that situation when it's clear our number one priority is keep the ball out of the net? Now, I could also argue that by putting 4 center backs on the field and taking off a holding midfielder, you're basically asking us to absorb pressure because you don't have Walty sort of stepping forward into that space to try to take the ball away and push the play forward. Instead, we're sitting back and inviting, give us what you got, because we got big guys back here to stop it, and they didn't. So yeah, that is annoying.
Yeah, but even at that point in the game, like tactically, you could have done a different alignment of those players, right? I mean, for the past 2 years, Luke Biasi has played as a wingback. Why, right? Like, so you can push him out and push Kenny further back up again at that stage, now that you've got 3 other center backs on the field. Or you can push him into midfield, right? Like that we kept 3 center backs or 4 center backs and they were all playing defensively, I think is part of the issue that we saw there.
Yeah, agreed. I would, in that scenario, I would be curious to see what would happen if you almost push Hogan into sort of a holding midfielder position and just say, you suck everything up that comes in here. Like you just try to head every ball that comes in. Don't even worry about man marking. Big body.
Like the reverse Steven Dos Santos.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. But yeah, we just don't see stuff like that. So anything else on this one, guys? No.
I don't want to. No.
Yeah, crickets. So I guess moving on, obviously it's a disappointment. Some will look at this as a positive. We didn't lose. We did have another draw. Like I said, 7 games without a loss. That may end up benefiting us down the stretch. We shall see. But at this point, we can only sort of take one game at a time. We only have 9 games left. And as I mentioned, only one of those is against Western teams. So we play El Paso on the last game of the season. So basically it's all Eastern teams from here on out. And I think we get Birmingham twice. So like we really kind of have to show up. We have Birmingham and Indy both away, sort of back to back. And then after that, it's like home away, home away, home away for the rest of the season. So we're going to have lots of chances at home to try to pick up points against teams that we need to get points against. My big concern is very similar to what we said earlier. If teams come into Highmark and they know that they just need to get a point against us, are we good enough to break teams down when they bunker? And if we're being, air quotes, perfectly mediocre, then I don't think that's going to happen. And that's going to make for a long 9 weeks, but we shall see.
Well, I think with that, right? Like, it's not just, are we good enough now? That's a long-term question we've had. And does Bob construct a team that consistently can do that? Yes, we've seen it happen from time to time, but I think that is much more of an individual player finding a moment of brilliance rather than the team being able to consistently figure out how to break down a bunker defense and throw in how we feel the team's mediocre. That exasperates it for me.
Yeah. We're 5 points out of a playoff spot. We've played as many as 2 more games than other teams in the East at this point. The big question is, at this point, if I'm asking you to put money on the team making the playoffs or not, what are you doing, Josh?
It's not there so far. I'm not saying we can make the playoffs, but if I'm gambling on this, I'm not saying they are going to make the playoffs. What is it? 12 points if we win all of our home games and lose all of our away. That's probably not enough. So we kind of need to win all of our home and then draw a couple of those away games. So I think it's 17 points if we were to not lose at all and win at home and draw away. That's still, you know what I mean? It was especially when you consider that 2 games in hand thing. That's the scary part to me, because I'm like looking at the standings, like, oh, we're only a couple points out, like 4 points from the last playoff position. So maybe that's not that much, but then it's like, well, actually, you should probably think of it as 6 points, or add 6 points onto that for those 2 games in hand that everyone has. And it's like, at that point, it's you need all these points. So it's going to be rough. It's underdog story, and I feel like this is what the Hounds usually do is they wait until the last minute. It's kind of like procrastination. So yeah, it's getting to the deadline. You're gonna have to start performing now.
Yeah. Steve, you putting money on them getting in or not?
Not a chance.
Not a chance.
There's no chance of putting money on them getting into the playoffs.
Okay, that's fair.
Like, no, I don't tend to gamble anyway, so I'd have to be real confident. No, I mean, do I think that there is a pathway for them to get to the playoffs? Yes. They need to really change the performances going forward, and they need some of those teams that are ahead of them to really get beat up down the stretch. And I think that, to Josh's point, there are a number of teams that are ahead of us because of the extra games in hand where they don't have to outperform us for their last 11 games, right? Like, they just need to not drop enough points that we surpass them, even if we are lights out for the rest of the season. And so that's kind of concerning. And I think as I look through kind of the interactions of who's left to play, I haven't gone through the rest of the season fully, but yeah, there are some games where somebody that we're chasing is going to drop points. But I'm just not sure that's enough unless we are getting 15, 16, 18 points at this stage. And those teams are dropping a lot of points.
Yeah.
Draws are really good for the rest of the table. They're terrible for us.
Yeah. I think the lesson is it possible? Yes. If we're judging based off of everything that we've seen so far this season, is it likely? Probably no. But fingers crossed. One game at a time. I mean, that's kind of what we've been saying all season. Okay, like maybe next one will be better. So,
hey, we play Miami still one time.
Listen, even at this point, I'm not convinced that, like, I'd love to say that's an easy 3 points, but
I was going to say, so I was like looking, like they've only won 2 games this whole season, and I clicked to see which teams they beat, and one of them was the Switchbacks, and I was like, oh. Cool. Granted, it was like the first game of the season, so that's early and blah blah blah. But still, it was just kind of like this deflating moment where it's like, they've only beat 1 team or 2 teams.
Yeah.
Oh crap! The team that just drew us at home. Cool.
Yeah, Miami has 8 points this season, so you'd have to hope we can beat them. But
I'm not taking it for granted.
I mean, you can't take anything for granted, obviously, but that, yeah. Oof. Cool.
Are there any positives that we can leave the show on?
There's still hope. There's still a chance. It's not like we can't do this, and we, have statistically advantage here with the fact that Bob has never missed the playoffs, and so like if anyone's gonna pull it out, it's gonna be him. But it's gonna be rough, and we're gonna have to step it up, and we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think a positive for me is even after the rain delay, there were so many people at the game. So for better or worse, the performance in the standings is not impacting whether or not people are turning out to watch the game. So that's good. Yeah. Hopefully that continues. So, all right. Well, there's your positives. Right. Take those and run with them this week. So as I mentioned, we do head to Birmingham this weekend. We're going to try to line up a player interview as usual. We don't know who it is yet. And I've reached out to Kaylor from the USL show, who also talks all about Birmingham, to see if we can get him on for an insider show to learn what we can about them. Who knows? Maybe Kizza will go off and score 4 goals in each of the 2 games we have against them, and we'll have no issues. And it'll be great.
DK, let's do it.
That's right. So that's what's going on. Make sure that you guys stay tuned. We really appreciate all of the feedback and thoughts. And if there's anything that we've said here that you disagree with, please let us know in the comments, either on YouTube, or you can hit us up over on X/Twitter/ whatever you want to call it. Otherwise, stay tuned, because as always, we will be bringing you much more Hounds content very, very soon.
Later.
See ya.